Daniel, how are you, man? Long
Hey,
time no
Doc.
see.
Good, good. Indeed, indeed. So far, so good. Hoping you as well.
Lots of beard since the last time with.
Maybe, I don't know if it started in COVID or so, but now it's not even groomed. I have my next appointment on Saturday, so you really caught me almost out of the woods.
Well, thank you so much for making the time and for everybody who's tuning in live. First of all, let us know where are you tuning in from. I'm right now at the Bulgarian seaside in Pomorie. I'm going to start first. I've been at the beach just an hour ago, but I'm here now because I can't wait to learn from Daniel. Last time we met, it was 2017. Both of us were speakers at a conference in Graz. Great conference. We had a great time with a few drinks at the speakers dinner. And here we are, and I can't wait to learn from Daniel. And I gotta be honest, it's one of those episodes that I had so many questions that I don't know how to fit them all. And we had so many questions from the audience as well. So I guess let's get on going, Daniel. Um, Flix, how did you guys start? I mean, one doesn't wake up at the middle of the night and say, "Hey guys, let's start a bus company or transportation company." What was the real story?
It it actually also didn't really happen like that. You know, Andrew, Jochen, and myself, we were talking a while, and just bouncing ideas because what drove us is that you can even call it annoyed that we were annoyed of the golden hamster wheel with Microsoft for myself and the Boston Consulting Group for the others. And we really wanted to do things better and thought, um, you know, somehow we have to prove it ourselves that we can do. But eventually there were so many challenges and problems, and we kept on, discussing how to build certain business model around them. And then back in the days, in Germany, it was not allowed to have long distance buses. So there was no thing similar to Greyhound, for instance. And then the EU kind of dropped a deregulation on that bus market in the entire European Union. And fortunately, and funny enough, also, uh, you know, rarely, Germany was among the first adopters of that regulatory. And we read about that, and we did, and called us and said, like, folks, how about building a bus company? And therefore it was a bit of an accident driven by a market. And I still believe that the addressable market of any new company or startup is very meaningful, potentially together with a team even more than maybe the pure idea itself, because the idea can pivot. If the market size is not large enough, you have a challenge. And that was the main driver for us to do buses, because we thought that's a super large market and we somehow figure something out to be able to address it in a good way. And that's how it started. And I have to really admit, I remember very clearly when I got the call, and I was not, giving standing ovations. I was rather like, okay, a bus company? Are you serious? And what exactly do I, as the techie, do in a bus company? That was more of the reaction. But at the end, Andre and I, we know each other forever, and he could eventually have come up with anything, and I would have agreed to start up with.
Initially, you guys were still having full-time jobs when you started the project. When did you decide to quit and fully commit to the Flix journey?
So with the other two guys working at BCG, they actually were on leave, so they're working on their PhDs. So that's a good model, which many of the strategy consultancies have. At Microsoft, I just in the beginning asked my boss to have something in parallel, so to be able to, work in parallel, and then you obviously eat up your personal time, and rather than, I don't know, playing computer games, you started playing Flix. And then, sometime in, I went back to my former boss at Microsoft and asked him to do part-time. So I moved down and reduced it by about the half. And then I did for half a year, and then I quit. I basically was jobless for some months until I finally got employed at Flix. So, it was a gradual process, but it was very much clear that, we had to take that step at one time, because I believe you need to have skin in the game once you really start through with your own company.
And I want to bring it to these early days. I came across a picture of you guys. It was a collage. It was a collage from the early days. You have this white, like everybody has these white shirts, very proper, kind of in a very small box kind of room, working from there. And there was a bus. I don't know if that was the first bus, right? But I'm actually curious, when was the first bus ride? Did you guys all join this bus ride, like the first ever Flix bus?
We we greeted it. We greeted it. It departed from Nuremberg to Munich. It was mid of February 2013, and we were there to, just celebrate and greet it. But I don't think we rode it fully. So at least not the first one. But over time, we've been riding, quite a lot, our buses.
Now the company is a global leader. Have you ever had these ambitions? Have you told when you guys were starting, we're gonna grow big and it's gonna be a global giant?
So I would be lying if I said yes, that exactly was what we had in mind. I believe if you start something up, you have a certain dream and would wish for, and you build your kind of like mental castle and can imagine how it looks like and this and that. And obviously you somehow want to become successful. But apparently the order of magnitude I would not even have dreamed of. So it was not in, the set of possibilities. That's the reason I didn't really exactly think that size Flix currently has. But indeed, for us, it was crystal clear in the beginning that we had to build something meaningful. So we never only focused on you know, a certain line or a certain region. We always were crystal clear that if we start, it has to be a fully fledged inventory, at least serving entire Germany as, an alternative to, the railway or your personal car. That was always clear. And then a little bit into the startup journey, we also discovered, hey, I mean, if it works in Germany and the regulatory is suitable, could work also in other countries. So we relatively early thought about other countries, but it was more about a bit of France here and a bit of Italy there. And at the end, that it became 44 countries. Well, that was just over time, kept on collecting and firing up new countries.
And what do you think made a difference? Because as I understood, they there were some competitors at the time. You were not the biggest player. What made you guys win the race?
So Andre is older than I, even though we know each other forever. Um, and we went to school together where we really got to know each other good. That was A, our first company, but B, and that's the important message, we played volleyball together. And sports, team sports in particular, is something which, tells you A, that you better win together, but each position has to make an impact. And also, it's all about competitiveness. When we played volleyball, independent how strong our opponent or, the ones we fought again were, we always wanted to win. That was the only issue. So I believe compared to particularly the incumbents, our competitiveness, our persistence, and paired with a certain level of aggressiveness. So you really, you want to push it to the edge, push the boundaries. That mixture of ingredients is something which made Flix special. And that especially worked very well against all the incumbents and the large players.
So I would imagine speed was a big factor for you guys.
Speed, and if you talk about speed, eventually the speed of deciding things um, is not only was a big factor, but it remains a big factor. I believe in competition, many of the corporates you see as a newcomer, their challenge is that they think forever and they take forever to decide, and that slows down even the execution. So the speed in my experience, starts with how fast you can decide.
So you knew each other and you kind of set the rules. We guys have to move fast. We can make mistakes, but that's okay because we will learn on the way. That was kind of the culture from the get-go, the conversations you had.
Yeah, it's you know, being entrepreneurial means willing and able to take accountability, willing to take decisions and very fast, and that would be, I think, beneficial, as we talked about already. And C, well, taking risks, not pointless, but essentially calculated risk. Taking risk is something which is an essential part and still in the Flix culture. And that's what you do. You learn on the way. You take calculated risk. If it goes wrong, you really fix it quickly. You take decisions quickly, and then you reiterate day in, day out.
The first time I tried, I got a ride with Flix. I was in Denmark. I was living in Denmark.
Interesting. Didn't know that.
Yeah, and I did and I remember it was 150 krona from Aarhus to Copenhagen. It was like, oh, that's a cheap ride. So I was, post-student kind of environment, I guess. But then I got into the bus and I'm like, this bus is clean. It's nice. It's to me it was like the IKEA of buses. It was just efficient to the core. So the features that I wanted, this nice color and it's clean and it's a nice system online for booking, they were there, but they were not any redundant features. That was my first impression, and I've been using Flix for years after. So yeah, talk to me about that. Was that the vision? How did you decide to differentiate ahead of your competitors at the time?
Yeah. The no frills attitude was something which we knew, I guess, from the early days of the low-cost carriers in the airline industry. I believe we've seen in the German market with Deutsche Bahn on the one hand, but also other players on the other hand, where you can really overdo it on the edges and have like all the nice stuff, but at the end you forget about what it's actually about and what your customers want. And there, also in the early days where we had that competition you mentioned, we had so many discussions, and people were, talking about stewards on the buses. They were talking about vending machines and stuff like that. And we were just imagining, hey, how can we make it as simple as it gets to book a ticket? So really peace of mind. And how can we, create a system which allows us to operate at the lowest cost possible, to also hand our customers the lowest prices possible? And what does really matter if you are on a bus? Of course, it's reliability. Of course, it's safety, and of course, it's a price point. But also, what is it else? And we believed back in the days it's easy things like a power outlet or Wi-Fi on the buses, and something which is repeatable, where you can rely on. So independent where you run a Flix, it's always the same. You've got always power outlets. You've got always Wi-Fi, and and um, and that's what matters. So it has to be affordable and, in our sense, also sustainable. Plus, a very much reliable thing where you exactly know what you'll be getting.
So you're three dudes, you decide to transform and innovate in the transportation industry, excited, ambitious. Um, but I'm just curious, man. Like, what'd you do? Like, as I understand, you didn't have experience in the transportation industry. Did you just start calling around, try to rent buses? Give us some of those stories and early naivety, kind of mindset of an entrepreneur.
It is exactly like you imagine. Meanwhile, I believe we have a bit of an idea how transportation. Back in the day, we came from the customer's perspective. We thought about what was not so good having a train or your personal car, and what was annoying, and we tried to fix that. And we took just the opportunity that buses from that moment in time, were able to be handed in the modality, right? So just as an additional mode of transportation. And then we just drew it. Literally, we drew it as we would have imagined that, but without the particular knowledge. And with that drawings, we went to the industry. We called thousands of bus partners and we visited them to do two things. Essentially, to convince them becoming part of the family, the Flix family, but also learn from their experience, doing that business for almost 100 years already, right? And then you have to benchmark and you have to learn. You have to remain very open and very self-reflected and not pretending you know anything because, well, we didn't. And then we just, added up all the information we collected and that compounded in the current business model, which, we just in theory developed, and in the core it's still the same as day one, but then we groomed it also together with the industry, which is important because they knew how the business goes.
Excellent. We have many questions, and I'll be covering some of the questions from the audience as well. I think a question from and I want to give shout out to everybody who posted your questions. Thank you so much, guys. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to the Productivity Mastery podcast yet, now is the moment to go to your Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. But I want to start with a question from, I hope I pronounced your name well, Salom Abraham. So he has a question. What was the toughest decision you had to make in the early years of Flix, and how did it shape the company's future?
So there's many tough decisions. The good thing is most of them are not, really ultimately future decisive. And quite a lot of them are also reversible. So it was a tough but a wrong decision. You can just recall it and take it differently. If you're brave enough to also, acknowledge that you took a wrong decision. But of course, there's some of them which were really tough and large, and therefore a decision which I believe um, also shaped the company's future a bit. Certainly, one of these decisions was when we decided some weeks in, I think it was when Bergamo happened with COVID in Italy, we decided relatively quickly to entirely shut down our network. And why it was a tough decision? I mean, obviously, everybody can imagine no network, no rights, no revenue. Um, and well, but A, we thought we do not want to be someone who is, spreading around further. And B, we anyhow had to adjust because there were curfews, this happened, that happened. So it was a pandemic, a massive crisis with exponential growth. Nobody had seen that before in our generation. So we were like, okay, do we do salami tactics, so to say, and try to adjust? But we were like realizing relatively quickly, adjusting on an exponential growth like a pandemic is a hard one. So we really, stopped that salami tactic relatively early and took the brave decision to cut it off for some time, because then we at least had some calmness to focus on the savings, to really work with our bus partners to make sure we're fit for survival, and not day in, day out, really, moving around and trying to adapt to something, as I said, nobody had seen before in our generation. So and that was a tough decision because if you kind of cut proactively the stream of your revenue, this is like, I stop eating today, and I believe, I'll figure it out in the meantime, and then I can recover quick enough so I'm not passing out.
I can't even imagine what was it for you, man. Like, as a company that's relying on transportation, whatever, the whole world is shut down pretty much, and you don't know how long it's gonna be. I mean, the first week or two, I guess it's like, oh, okay, let's see what happens. But then there's payroll, then there's expenses, there's, I mean,
So these are also two, I don't know, experiences I made. A grain of optimism mixed with a grain of naivety is something which is not too bad being an entrepreneur. Because if you know everything which can happen in a bad sense already, you might not even start. And if you start at one point believing that, it's pointless, we will anyhow, you know, die now in a company point of view, well, then it's also becoming pointless. So you have to believe we get over it. And back in the days, that was not only from a personal and a company point of view, but it was from a society point of view. And, for some things, you have to be a bit naive in order to just, take the action and realize later, okay, that was a very complicated ride. I'm not sure if I would have started it when known in advance. So these are two, I guess, patterns which are somehow helpful.
Entrepreneurship is often portrayed as this super fun and sexy ride. For,
It's always an exciting ride. Sometimes fun, sometimes sexy.
no, but that's what I mean. That side of entrepreneurship, and I've been building my own businesses for more than 12 years now, and I gotta say this part is real. But I wonder, can you maybe paint us the real picture? Mm, I mean, even looking at you right now, Daniel, you have this kind of a zen kind of energy. Like if somebody's listening, they'll be probably saying, "Well, but that's Daniel. He's an entrepreneur. It's easy for these guys. Like, look at how smooth they're running." And can you give me the brutal, real picture of what is entrepreneurship like, and maybe just give us some numbers, even like how many hours did you guys have to work? Some of the struggles, the challenges, like.
So being an entrepreneur is not just a job, it is an occupation. What does that mean? That means you cannot predict what will happen tomorrow. You have to always be eager to deal with the uncertain. Really, you have to almost love the uncertain. And you have to blend your life in your company. I keep on telling my wife Flix was our first kid. She says, like, no, it was your first kid. The other two we had together. And and that set is, that set means that it becomes part of your body, it becomes part of your being. And the tragedy about that is, well, if the company or organization suffers, you suffer. And if the company, is really celebrating for whatever reason and is performing, you also have lots of joy. And you have to be able and willing and capable to deal with that. It's kind of like a little bit psycho in a good way, I believe. And that, I think, takes quite some, general calmness and a high level of resilience. But it is certainly a roller coaster. And as people know, sometimes these roller coaster rides, eh, they are, at the end, you're always brave and you somehow enjoyed it and you've got lots of adrenaline, but there are like some corners and edges and loops where it's like, oh my God. And you'll get over it.
What do you do in such moments? Now that you have years and years of experience, when things are tough, when you go through struggles, challenges, the company is suffering, maybe your co-founders, your team is suffering. What is your reflex? Like, what do you do in times of pressure to be able to respond?
Yeah. So one of my working ethics and something which really drives me for years now is just work hard and be nice to people. If you did everything you could do, it's always easy to watch yourself in the mirror. And there is no reason to have bad mood and not being nice to people, because being in a bad mood never solved any damn problem. It just doesn't. Essentially, if you're in a bad mood, you maybe feel even worse and you have, I don't know, bad hormones and stuff like that. And, it's really, it does something bad in my point of view to your body, but it doesn't help you to solve any problem. So you can always, independent how hard it is, stay good mooded. And that means, as I said, work hard and be nice to people. That's the one thing. And, there's a saying that the British, always are kind of like touched with is keep calm and carry on. Again, being very nervous and, running around like a headless chicken also never solved any problem. And if you just stop moving, you also don't solve any problem. So keep calm and carry on. So these two things, and the one I believe, is been said by by the British in the early days, even before World War II, I believe. But it's a motivational slogan. As work hard and be nice to people, I also believe is a slogan from a sweatshirt or so. But it doesn't really matter, even though it's now, regular quotes. I could refer to a person. I love both of the sayings, and both helped me a lot to get along over the last 12 years of entrepreneurship.
Or it's a cliche, or it's a motivational quote for a reason, right? Because it's not about knowing it; it's about doing it when times matter.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
there's so many leaders
Yeah.
that they know all those things, right? But when the crisis occurs, then it's about the test, the real test. Who are you as a leader? And
Exactly.
which brings me to question about leadership. How has your leadership style changed from the days until today? Is there any kind of leadership concepts and ideas that you believed in that you they no longer hold for you?
I think the family style and very friends-oriented leadership became a bit more professional. So even though you remain nice to people, the level of professionalism due to the size of the company is a little bit higher. I think I'm still easy to be approached, but it might be different than when we were only 20 people. First. Second, and that's more important, core principles of my leadership style remained the same. So, um, I know myself. I'm not a very structured person. I can barely follow my own tasks. So if I would start to become a micromanager and give you tasks and follow them up, I would terribly fail. And that's not authentic, because it's like, I would even forget following up the tasks I gave you. And that said, you really need to know yourself, and then surround you with good leaders, good people who are way better in the jobs and, the tasks and, the challenges you bring them on board for, right? So, once you have these people who are better in what they're doing than you do, it is very obvious that you delegate. Because if you would not delegate, well, that's not a logical decision then. If the people you delegate to are eventually better, as they hired them as better for the job you hired them for, you have to delegate. That's the only logical, only that makes sense. And last but not least, that is what made me calling myself Chief Organizational Plumber over time. Then you remain doing two things: being always ready to support, asking lots of questions, and making sure that people call you in time if they're blocked, not being able to do what they're better at. And then you come and plumb it free so it can flow. And you certainly must not shy away and always take, one for the team and move ahead as a leader, especially if it's the hard choices. And that's about it, because as a role model, you can also then expect that towards, for instance, your first line. And these things always stayed the same. Maybe because we had the pleasure of, having worked in our former jobs for some years. I think it was 8 with me. Maybe it was because I was a volleyball coach for some time, and you had to develop skills to motivate these people without being the line manager and, signing off, I don't know, vacation approvals and stuff like that. Just, bringing them to come to training 2 times a week in their free time. And all these things together, um, I just, mixed something which worked for me, and that didn't change. That's just my core leadership principles, which remain for me very functional and true.
I'm actually quite surprised when you said that you are not such a well-organized person. To me, you look like this structured, organized.
No, no.
But if I ask your assistant, probably
He's sitting next to me. He's like, oh, damn, no. I mean, he's a chaotic. Knowing that, if you know yourself, I can work on that, but I can also rely on my strength and have, again, good people, making sure I'm a hold on myself and on top of things. So I have Claudia, my chief of staff. She's also currently, I think, at the coast of pretty Bulgaria. And then I have my personal assistant, and they really make sure this works. And on top of that, as I said, you try to find your first line, your leaders, your managers, to be much better in, in the things you hire them for than yourself. So that is how it works. And then, I can kind of accept that a bit of a chaotic personality in my case.
And by the way, that's such a great lesson, such a great reminder to everybody out there, especially the younger guys, the early stage founders out there that are trying to role more to model some style. They look at an entrepreneur out there, they try to be like them, and everybody's different.
I cannot agree more, Stoyan, because running and founding a company eats so much energy. It just needs that energy. It is a tough exercise. That said, means you need all your energy to focus on your company, and some of the energy maybe to recover, have your private life, your family, sports, and so on and so forth. If you put energy in being an actor or an actress, playing a different role, against your family, against your company, maybe, even a third role somewhere else, then it's like you literally eat up your energy, you know, pretending to be someone, copying certain styles which are not you. Authenticity is key, not because you would work better, I believe, as a leader, especially because if you're not authentic and move around, as you said, like then maybe you become an actor. That's their job. But, as an entrepreneur running a company, this is not your job to have different personalities and styles to move around with or copy something which doesn't feel very natural to yourself.
Beautiful. Talk to me about the early days again. Um, if you if you were to go back and you have to redo the journey over again, what are some things you would do differently? What are some of the lessons that you can maybe share with the entrepreneurs out there listening?
So what we did in the beginning, just maybe we didn't have the guts. We collected some money from, the KfW, which is the entrepreneurial bank in Germany supporting, companies and stuff. And we obviously had our own money put in, and we had money on a bank account, but we refused to invest that in software early enough. And then we were too late when that law really got live, opening up that bus market. So in the beginning, we had to purchase quite some software together and attach it together and integrate it and stuff like that. And we had to rely on third party. In our case, our inventory management system, the core of our company, our platform, so to say, is is our USP. This is where we create value. This is kind of like our heart. And obviously, you may not give your heart away and have someone external, dealing with that. So that was, I believe, a stupid decision. And at the end, we only didn't have the guts to, invest into risk. But that's fine. If you learn from that, that's okay. You can fix almost everything. And now, our core systems are entirely and 100% in control of ourselves. And that's also what I would suggest to each and everyone. Look into your company. What are you doing? What's the services, the products, and whatever is your key contribution, your key value driver, your USP, basically, you better do yourself.
Many companies, many startups are having a lot of energy. Entrepreneurs are always passionate, always having tons of energy, but sometimes they make it to 15-20% team and they get into a plateau, and sometimes it's related to the inability to turn the chaos into structure and processes. What was the story for you guys? Was that something that you knew from the BCG background of your co-founders, and was that a key element for your future success?
So, I think in our particular case, the experience we were able to gain, for me at Microsoft, and I started in Detroit or close to Detroit in the automotive industry, and the others, as you mentioned, at the Boston Consulting Group, that gave you experience already, um, learning things which you didn't want to do and copy, which is also good because you don't have to try. And having experienced things which worked well. For instance, structure. What kind of structure is it which works better than the other, and what felt familiar with? Um, and there, I believe, on these step changes of growth, when you need to turn and you very brilliantly hit it, chaos into structure. There, I guess we kind of automatically applied what we knew out of our projects and former jobs, which made it a bit easier for us. I can imagine if you found your company directly out of school or university, that could be a bit more challenging. And what I would do is, the entrepreneurs in any country, everywhere around the world, this is kind of a community. Look who did that maybe 2, 3, 5 years earlier, who is a bit more progressed, and benchmark. Talk to a bunch of people, and ultimately, what looks good, what feels good, and then you mix it to what fits your personal situation in the company, and then go from there. And then you keep on adjusting. The iteration never stops.
And one thing is to create this structure and skill, but then there's the danger, the risk that you might lose yourself in too much structure and at some point turn into a slow, sluggish corporate. So how do you navigate this kind of?
At the end, it's about addressing the market. It's about the customers, and that together makes a business about growth, so revenue, and bottom line, so profit. This is what it is. And everything else, and that includes structure processes, has to support that. So start to question regularly if you build structure, if you build processes. Do I earn more money? Do I satisfy my customer more? Do I reduce cost? Or is it like, oh, maybe it looks nice or it feels good, but it's not really directly attributable to growth or profitability or customer success? Then it's like, maybe you just pause it for a while and see whether you can do it without. Because simplicity is the key. The magic is to keep it running and eventually also sort it out in terms of structure as simple as possible. Additional layers don't make sense. So only as much layers and structure as absolutely necessary.
Is it part of your core responsibilities as Chief Organizational Plumber to simplify?
I think I'm keen about that, and I observe that, and I give hints and nudges. But for us in our culture, it's part of each and every one, especially the leadership, to do that. It's not only something which is on top of my shoulders.
So you've been growing. Now it's more than 5,000 people, I believe.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
When was it the time that you guys kind of decided to formalize the culture, if you have, in terms of kind of, I mean, have you guys created any sort of a, I don't know, the core values, and that's how we live them, and and then incorporating that also in the recruitment processes, or how did you solve that?
we started in the beginning to proactively formalize, but that didn't work out too well. Later on, we more or less let it happen and try, to just go with the flow and then maybe groom it here and there so it fits nice and tight. Taking the example you took with the values, how that worked. In the beginning, values in a company obviously is a set of the personalities, the personal values, the experiences of the founding team. That's what it is. And then once you hire people, the values of the company adjust to all the experiences and, the personalities and the people that you've hired and what they learned or have seen. And that's the values. That's what it is. So that means if you want to first put it down, write it down and formalize, you better ask to these people or know that people. If you artificially write values down, which eventually does not match with the experiences and, the personalities and the history of the people you have, it's bullshit. Full stop. So in the first time, we just put down values which sounded nice. We didn't even think about that the initial values is what we were, like Andrew, Jochen, and I. We just put something down which sounded nice. And only in the second, third, and then from then point in time, ongoingly iterations, we did it together with the people because it is what the people of the company are. And then when you know your values, you can also craft your vision and put them around so it fits again nicely together. but just writing stuff down doesn't make sense. So, obviously, if you have then gathered and asked the people and know what's coming, then you just, as I said, groom it a bit so it's not messy, but a bit, put together. Um, but you have to first listen and then put together and not just generally write things down because they rather will be very artificial.
I would argue majority of companies out there probably have values that are just sounding nice, but they don't live them.
You can't. If it's artificial, it's very, very challenging to live them because, the people then are maybe different than the values. And then it's just not working. You cannot adjust a company and an entire organization to something put on a PowerPoint.
No, and you're right. The founders, the founding team, and the core employees, the first employees, have a huge impact on how the culture will evolve.
Very
Because
long.
the, if you care about punctuality and the founders are always on time, and if somebody's not on time, they point out and they make a issue out of it, and like then you cultivate this culture, and the new people coming in and they become part of it. They might include something in the culture, they might expand it, enrich it, but still the principles will stay as long as
Yeah.
the founders live them and focus on them and empower them. So yeah, it's interesting. Do you have any principles non-negotiable right now for you? For example, customer is first no matter what, or we always on time, or we are efficient for customer. Like, do you have any kind of principles that are non-negotiable for Flix?
No, I guess the only thing is we don't hire assholes, full stop. Because if you want to take care about your customer, you first and foremost have to take care about your people. They're way closer to me than the customer. And if I want them to treat the customer well and do all what you said, which is obviously true for us too, then it starts earlier. Don't hire assholes. Non-negotiable.
Listen carefully, everybody, especially those of you startup founders that finally found this one person with a little bit of experience that want to join your startup for not too big of a salary. They're a little bit of an asshole, but it's like, yeah, but they're really good in sales. Never works. From my experience personally, but also from being in contact with many successful people like Daniel, never a good choice.
Can't agree more. It's exactly as I said.
Daniel, this podcast is called Productivity Mastery. I read an article, an interview you did a few years ago, and I'm interested to hear if that still holds. But in that interview, and I'm gonna quote you, you said, "I spend about 10% of my time burning monkeys, the shit you have to do. 20% is dedicated to strategy. Another 70% is maintaining and nurturing our organization and culture." So, is it still the case? Or how do you decide how to allocate your time week to week?
Yes, this is still the case. And burning monkeys, I may have to explain. At the end, our problems and challenges in any organization are like a bunch of monkeys running around. And often people try to put their monkeys on your shoulder. But apparently, people are around you and your organization to deal with their fucking monkeys. So you are not, the monkey guy. But it's sometimes easy because you're the founder, you're full of energy, and you rather take them all. No, you don't. You hired good people, eventually better people for the problems they're hired for, so they got to deal with their monkeys. But sometimes monkeys start to fucking burn. And burning monkeys, sometimes you have to take care of. You must make sure that nobody, on purpose lights up her or his monkey. This is a bit of against the rules, though. But sometimes they just catch fire. And if it's a burning monkey, you got to deal with that. And usually, as higher the monkey burns, as more likely it is it ends up at the founder's desk, the C-level's desk. So I always have to take care about, burning monkeys. Maybe it's 10%. And then, there's 20% strategy, talking with my co-founders, talking with our advisory board, talking with our most senior leadership team to see, on the mid, particularly also on the long term, when we go, where do we want to move the guardrails a bit, right? So give some guidance. And then the rest is to make sure everybody is understanding that guidance. Everybody is adjusting to what that is on the one thing. And that's what I mean with, you know, maintaining and nurturing the organization. So it really runs as smooth as it can. You always have to put a little bit oil here and, you know, a little bit lube there. And then you also make sure that the culture, is obviously continuously evolving because there's new people coming, other people going, and then there's different cultures, different regions, different customers. But you have to define what's the core, and then, you know, make sure the culture is very strong in the core, very strong in the core. But on the surface, it's also very easy and handy because you have to adjust, as said, for instance, to many different cultures and regions. In our case, it's more than 44 countries we're present.
Everyone has a different productivity style. You mentioned already that you are naturally not such an organized person, but how do you decide,
Hmm.
okay,
Yeah.
this quarter, let's say, or this month, like what should I focus on?
I'm independent of the time, independent whether it's monthly or quarterly or whatever. I work, you know, my core productivity, I learned with Microsoft how to deal with an almost infinite amount of inflow in, you know, Outlook, for instance. Doesn't really, the tool is like, doesn't matter. And what I put on top of that, it started, I guess, during my career at Microsoft, but I refined it here at Flix. I work heavily with the Eisenhower matrix. So what is urgent and important in the one quadrant? What is only urgent and what is only important on the other two quadrants? And what is neither important nor urgent on the fourth quadrant? And I only try to really, you know, deal with the urgent and important quadrant, which apparently is kind of like the burning monkey corner, so to say. And the other things I either, you know, delegate, or I just wait until it becomes urgent and important because it escalates. So I can just, you know, passively manage it. And whatever is not urgent, not important, I try to be nice and, you know, tell people that they're not on my agenda, but these things just don't make it on my agenda.
But day to day, are you a calendar guy? Like your assistant maybe helps you kind of have this calendar of things, or you more like you list all those things, you put them through the Eisenhower matrix, and then
Yeah.
you kind of just start checking them off.
I try to reduce my inflow channels. So I make almost everyone, I try to do everyone, but, you know, it ends up with almost everyone writing me emails, which means I have my list in my inbox. And that means it goes directly to the Eisenhower filter, you know, here in my brain. And this is how I sort it. And obviously my personal assistant supports me, and sometimes she converts stuff out of the inflow into, you know, my diary, and then there's also my calendar. But the actual, you know, management works in my inbox.
Beautiful. All right. Well, I have a bunch of questions that were submitted by our listeners. So thank you, everybody who submitted questions. We won't be able to cover all of them, but I have a few of them that I want to cover with Daniel. So Daniel, there will be different questions around different areas. So Victoria is asking, how did your business model evolve from early stage to now?
The the beautiful truth is almost none, not so much. So our idea was to have a partnership model where we share the revenues. It's usually 30% on the Flix side and 70% of the partner side. Where we have also some, you know, skin in the game on the partners. So the partners are responsible for having a reliable and safe operations, and we make sure that we fill the buses or the trains with, you know, our customers. That's pretty much the same in each and every country we are, and it's even the same or very similar with Flix Train. So in the core, it didn't really develop so much. What we refined and tuned a bit is, you know, there's meanwhile kind of bonus and malus systems. So if, you know, our bus partners have very clean buses, are very much on time, have very friendly drivers, they could, you know, get a bit of more of the cake. And, you know, if they don't perform too well, they can eventually get a little less of the cake. So these refinements happen, but in the core, it's the same since day one.
Fetir, Puchiv, is asking, what were the most effective marketing strategies during Flix early years?
It was very much around performance marketing, really understanding, the keywords, having very low customer acquisition cost, a very, very uh, uh, high of high return of advertising spend raw, so to say, that we were very performance driven. That worked well because we could calculate. And Flix obviously has parachutable goods, so it's you can really operationally and rationally have a good marketing steering on that end. On the other end, where it's about brand and being on top of mind of people, it worked very well guerrilla wise. So we sprayed things on the streets, reversible though. But even though people then sued us, we bought entire bus tickets from our competitors, so they had to run with empty buses. People sued us. We had, covered entire university campuses with condoms and stuff like that. So it was always a bit edgy, but this is which makes you on top of mind with people.
That sounds a little bit like Richard Branson kind of style. With how did you get inspired?
Oh, I don't know. Jochen was always up for trying out things, and maybe he got inspired by Richard Branson. Maybe he also got inspired by O'Leary. I don't know. He never dressed up weirdly. The good thing. So Jochen didn't. O'Leary sometimes does. But both of these are also, they taking an edge. So people know, and that's also what we did.
So it gets you publicity, it gets you people to talk about it. I'm actually wondering now, how did I get to learn about Flix the first time? Was it online or somebody told me about it? I don't know. Or was it the green buses that you see all the time and you're like, well, what is this green bus? I'm wondering now. But you gotta be different. That's what you're saying. You gotta be edgy. You have to
Exactly.
be.
Exactly. You got people have to memorize.
All right. So we have another question here. Oh, that's a good one. Nassim Rasuli is asking, in the very early days before Flixbus had the brand or funding, how did you find and convince your first 10 team members to join you?
That's a very good question, though. So I think the truth is that many of these early team members knew us. Either they were former colleagues, some were friends, and we didn't hire them because of the friendship, but we knew them, also in a professional manner. Many of them are still with us. Some of them we rather attracted with a low entry barrier, so as interns, and then we converted them. And some of them we just talked in. So we basically, I think we caught them with our vision and with our passion, but they took a risk to sign. And that's also what is needed. If someone in the very, very early days needs too much evidence of, okay, can you send me your P&L and what exactly is your cap table? It's like we don't have a real P&L. We didn't even make revenue at that point in time, and our cap table is us. That's about it. So then they might not be the right people for that person in time. So I know one of my good friends who is still with the company and a senior leader in Flix Tech. I asked him and said, like, hey, come John, that's going to be cool. And he was a bit skeptical because he had to let behind his company car, the former company. But at the end, I think he felt that he can contribute. There's something he can really, put on the table. And he knew me and he knew that the culture would fit and there's lots of freedom. And he even had to convince his parents because they were like, are you serious? I mean, what the fuck should that be? But he felt it. And that's the reason he didn't overly annoy me with, hey, can you put all the data and facts on the table, which were anyhow very thin and narrow, right? Back in the days. And we, I believe, also had talks where people said like, okay, but I remember we had early conversations where people were like, hey, can I have much more vacation? I think we started with only 24 days. And, sometimes in the large corporations in Germany, at least, it's standard to have 30 days. And they were like, hey, I negotiate on vacations. And we said like, no, that's not the right attitude. Let's negotiate a bunch of 100 euros here or there, or maybe a bit more virtual stock options here or there. but we were always say if someone negotiates about vacation, we were not the right place in the beginning because we had to work day in and day out. And at the end, nobody asked a day more or less. If you took vacation, you took vacation. But it showed quite a bit about the attitude, and therefore, and maybe it's a pre-selection if people want to know too much about cap tables and P&L structures and things you may not have in the very early days.
And maybe let's expand a little bit on that, because I know a lot of people listening, they're not necessarily entrepreneurs, but they want to work in startups or fast growing scale ups. What would be your advice to them? What's the kind of mindset that you look for when you're hiring somebody to join such a company?
First, you have to be very risk-affine. It is a risk. It's a hell lot of a ride. Second, you have to be willing and capable to be independent and self-sufficient. You have to run the show. It's not that people run around and giving you tasks. Maybe sometimes that works, but at the end, you have to run the show. You really have to want to take decisions. You really have to want to look for different other challenges, tasks, and problems if your current project maybe came to an end. So it's on you. You have to be really willing to craft your own journey in these kind of companies. And you have to take it as an experience ride. Maybe set yourself 3 to 5 years as a timeline to gain as much experience as you can. Hell lot of a ride. And maybe it continues like the example I took with my colleague. Awesome. But maybe not. That's fine. You took 3 to 5 years and you may have had the chance of your life to learn as much as possible. And obviously, you have to have a decent salary because it's also from the point of the company that they do not want you to worry how you can, feed yourself properly or pay the roof above your head and rents and stuff like that. And often in the early days, there might be any virtual stocks and things like that included. And that's a bonus, just take it. And, if it kicks off, awesome, clap applause. But it's a bonus. This is a hell of a ride. It's either it's really good and you get lots out of that, or it's almost a zero. It's not something in between. It's not kind of an ordinary short-term incentivization. It's like skin in the game. And then it is, and you take it seriously, also if you would treat it like a computer game, because this is what it is, a very serious computer game. You try to win and achieve the next couple levels or as many as you can. And as said, maybe you continue after 3 to 5 years because it became a great journey, or, well, you learn a lot.
Beautiful, man. I feel like there's many people that fail to put themselves in the shoes of the founders, and they come in with this. They might have the skill set, the background, whatever, but they come up with this kind of attitude with a little bit of entitlement instead of how can I give, how can I generate value for this startup, how can I give more than anybody else with this kind of attitude, because of course down the road there'll be more opportunities for you, but I feel like sometimes people show up at an interview or like the first days at a job and they're more like, what's in it for me? And it's more like, what's in it for them? What's in it for, how can I make it valuable for the employer, for the
And it's an attitude question. You want to move the needle somehow. So it's like you want to be fully accountable. You want to be, decide things, take risks. I remember when I worked at an automotive supplier company in Detroit and in, the southwest of Germany, I never asked for a raise. It just happened by itself. I only asked for what's the next challenge? Where can I work? This is like, give me something, give me something. I was very young and I was full of energy. It's like, what's next? What's next? Give me something, give me something. And then, I just tried to kick ass. And then people by themselves came like, okay, I mean, we really may have to promote that guy or he needs more money. And that works especially well if the company culture of companies are good. So if they treat people fairly and equally, then it works well. This is obviously not always given, but beware of joining a company with a not so good culture. Because when I say don't hire asshole, well, you can turn it around and say like, don't work for asshole companies either.
Love it. Love it. We have so many more questions. Then we need to have it back at some point. But I want to wrap up this episode because I'm sure you have stuff to do. I'm on a holiday, but you're not. I'm sure you're hustling.
So
On, do you have,
you have stuff to do though.
I need to go to the beach, man. Yeah, but like I wanna finish with a question to wrap up the whole episode. What is the vision ahead of Flix? Like 3 to 5 years in the future, your boldest vision, 3 5 years from now, where is Flix going?
I'm afraid that what I'm saying now sounds to some people boring because we keep on doing what we're good at. We really are painting the world green. So everywhere where the regulatory allows us, we will start our buses. And just today, we announced we're going to go to Australia as our next country. But that's only the one thing. The most relevant strategic pillar over the next 5, but even 10 years is going to be Flix Train. We believe the train market, especially in Europe, is much larger than the bus market, and we believe it's not been done well. And we believe now we have enough knowledge about how transportation and mobility works, and therefore Flix Train is the future strategic pillar of Flix as a whole.
Daniel, thank you so much for being with us. After 2 years, we finally got you here. Hopefully, 2 years down the road, we'll get you back for part two. Where could people find you if they want to learn from you, or maybe if you guys have any open positions in some countries? Now is the time to share.
Yeah. So thanks, sister, for having me. It was a pleasure, and being persistent is also something very good, which we showed with today's episode, I believe. Well, everybody can find me on the social media. That's very easy, and reach out. Um, and well, at jobs.flix.com, you'll also find all of our job postings, and they're literally everywhere. And if it's not the time today, just keep on looking. And sometimes if you really feel this is the company, but you don't find something which exactly, just shoot an email, and then we also look into that, because sometimes it's about the match and not necessarily only about one single application to a dedicated job.
Daniel, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom. I haven't tried the Flix trains yet, so that's on my list. I'll definitely.
Hey, take one.
Next time we take it right again together.
Sure.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, everybody, for being with us. Please let us know in the comments which was the part that you enjoyed the most, which was the one learning, the lesson that really stuck with you from this episode. And if you haven't subscribed to Productivity Mastery, this is episode 221. Please subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. That help us to be able to bring in guests like Daniel and share freely their wisdom with you guys. Thank you so much, and see you once again next episode of the Productivity Mastery Podcast. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks. Ciao.